What's going on YouTube? It's Tej, back again with another video, and today we're going over another 2-round NFL mock draft, including trades. Really excited to bring this video your way. Hopefully you guys enjoy, and if you do, be sure to hit that like button. It helps me out a ton. Subscribe if you're new to the channel. We just passed 3,000 subscribers. Thank you all so much. What a great way to end 2023. This is my first mock of 2024, and now we're in the draft season. More teams are not playing football now than teams that are, so I know a lot of people are really excited to talk about the offseason, head coaching hires, free agency signings, draft, all that stuff. I do plan on doing a lot of content around that. Offseason is kind of like my favorite time to cover the NFL, actually. So really pumped up for the content I have planned. And before we get started in today's video, I have a couple of things I wanted to note just right off top, and it kind of ties in with the beginning of this draft. I do want to talk a little bit about some of the head coaching moves and some of the GM moves that have been made so far. A lot of that is still pending. I do plan on doing a predictions video for head coaching hires, so I'm looking forward to doing that. But right before recording this, I just saw something on X saying Caleb Williams and his part want nothing to do with Chicago. And it's hard to tell how valid that is because, you can just pay for a blue check mark next to your name. But his bio did say he's affiliated with the NFL. He's a beat reporter specifically for the Giants. So as I'm recording this, it feels like I might have seen that right before, kind of the fire starts to light, or starts to spread. So with that being said, I already planned on making this Drake May as the number 1 overall pick. I kind of teetered back and forth between him and Caleb Williams. Part of the reason I think this might be true is it sounds like it's all but confirmed Ben Johnson's going to be the head coach of the Washington Commanders. And they just hired a GM coming from San Francisco. I'll talk about Adam Peters in just a moment. But also Caleb Williams is a hometown kid from the DMV area. So I think he might be trying to position himself to be Washington's next quarterback, not Chicago's. So this is already what I had planned. May, Williams. I've said this multiple times in these mocks. You can't go wrong going the other way around. I think this is just 1A, 1B on my big board. So, and I have it made just a smidge over Williams, and like these guys a lot. They just kind of have different hurdles to overcome at the next level. So, don't know how valid that is. Maybe that's just smoke. Maybe there's no fire there. But maybe where there is smoke, there is fire. Did want to just note that before I ignore it, and then somebody mentions in the comments. I did see that. Very intrigued by it moving forward. I do think Chicago would just take a quarterback though, and I think there's only one team at this point they would trade with out of the number 1 pick, and it's the New England Patriots, who I have on the clock here, and I have them taking Jaden Daniels. Yeah, it's just time for a reset there for New England at the quarterback position. Figured Mike Vrabel, would be the coach. If I had done my head coaching prediction video yesterday or something, it was going to be Vrabel as my pick, but I don't hate the Gerard Mayo selection. Sometimes you can have the right structure, but you just need to get a little bit younger, a new voice, a little bit newer energy in the building, and I'm hoping that's what Gerard Mayo is doing. But like I said with Chicago, this is the one team I could see like Chicago being willing to move down for, because then you're in Marvin Harrison Jr. territory. But I think at this point, they're going to move on from Justin Fields. And just so it's clear off the top, I am going to go ahead and I'm going to just go with the assumption that he goes to Atlanta. That is just solely kind of a shot in the dark. But Falcons fans, if you're wondering why I don't take a quarterback in this mock, that is why. I am just going to go forward in this mock draft with the thinking that Justin Fields is going to be the quarterback of the Atlanta Falcons. Therefore, Chicago is taking a quarterback at 1, not going to move down to 3 and potentially move places with New England. I don't think the Patriots want to pay the premium to move up anyways. But that being said, I did want to just kind of address all that. And then for the Adam Peters hire, the GM for Washington, I like that a lot. I know Ian Cunningham and Peters were kind of the top 2 names for a lot of Commanders fans that I know. And really, I'm excited about the Peters hire, one, because he comes from a stable franchise in San Francisco like that. It's kind of hard to know who gets how much credit because so much of this is behind the scenes. But really, what I think I'm optimistic about is I hope that Peters embraces the same like John Lynch philosophy of like, look, I'm not going to bat 100, I'm not going to bat 1,000 in free agency, I'm not going to bat 1,000 in coaching hires, I'm not going to bat 1,000 in the NFL draft. But when I make a mistake, I'm not going to try to force it into being a hit. I'm going to move on quickly, and I'm just going to field the best roster, field the best coaching staff I possibly can, i.e. the Trey Lance trade. That's a disaster. That's one of the worst trade-ups in NFL history. But because the 49ers were quick to make a decisive decision, they moved on, and they made it count everywhere else in the roster and kind of had Brock Purdy fall in their lap. They're the best team in football. They're my Super Bowl pick right now. So that's kind of the thinking I want to see Washington have. I don't want, just because you made a selection, you have to force that, square peg into a round hole. Like, sometimes you just have to recognize, hey, you know what? It's not working. 2 years. Let's just get what we can. Let's go on. Let's move on. Let's try to get better. Let's learn from that. So that's what I'm hoping for. That being said, also, I think this team could have a much higher strike rate in regards to free agency and the NFL draft. So a lot of room for improvement there. A lot of things, kind of an info dump. Apologies. Rumor Peters higher, New England, Gerard Mayo, all that stuff. So a lot of information off the top. But I do think it's going to be 3 straight quarterbacks in this scenario, 1, 2, 3. And then here's a little bit of a fun scenario. What about wide receivers the next 3 picks? For Arizona, it's obvious they need a number 1 guy, and I think it makes everyone else on that wide receiver depth chart look that much better. Okay, Michael Wilson is your possession type as the number 2. Rondale Moore is a gadget player. They're probably moving on from Hollywood Brown. He's a free agent. Trey McBride then is honestly probably the number 2 target option, him or Michael Wilson. Moving forward, I like that a ton. So Marvin Harrison Jr., that one is simple enough. Malik Neighbors here at 5. Guy who can play inside and out, so no matter what happens. Mike Williams, if he's the guy they stick with, move on from Keenan Allen, you can move Neighbors in the slot and do a lot of really fun stuff. Sharp route runner, really fluid mover. Or what I ultimately think is going to be more likely, the team that misses out on T. Higgins makes a trade for Mike Williams. They move on from that. They extend the, Charger legend that is Keenan Allen, which, we'll see how much, they have to pay him and what that looks like in 3 years' time. But, a 3-year extension for Keenan Allen, and you play Malik Neighbors on the outside, and he's kind of the big play threat that Quentin Johnston hasn't quite been. That's my prediction as of right now. But again, with inside-out flexibility and a guy who can win as a route runner at all 3 levels, you can't go wrong here. And then for the Giants, Rome Odunze. I don't think this is improbable. When you talk about this class, you talk about the 3 quarterbacks at the top, because I think most people will have Jaden Daniels in that, probably going to go top 5, top 10 range. Some boards will vary. I still like Penix a ton, and the national championship game wasn't fun to watch for me, but still got him at QB3 with Daniels just behind him at 4. But I think consensus, those top 3 quarterbacks, Williams, May, Daniels, in whatever order you have them, and then the top 3 receivers. We've talked so much about it already in this cycle about how good Marvin Harrison Jr., Malik Neighbors, and Rome Odunze are. I wouldn't be shocked if it's 1, 2, 3 quarterback, 1, 2, 3 receiver. And look, the Giants didn't get anything they wanted out of Kenny Golladay like they thought they were going to get when that signing happened. They're still kind of missing that big physical archetype receiver. And Odunze to me is kind of Amari Cooper plus 2 inches and a little bit of weight, 6'3", 200-pound Amari Cooper. That's really what I see with him, Rome Odunze. Physical guy who can go win it in the air, route runner who can win at all 3 levels, and improve yards after the catch weapon this year at Washington. I'm really impressed with this game. He's been my kind of receiver. That's been kind of my top 3 receivers this whole cycle once I bought into Neighbors. So yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if all 3 of these guys go. And the way the board played out, top 3 all need quarterbacks, 4 through 6 all need receiver help. And that takes us to Tennessee Titans. I'm gonna stick with my OT1 here, Joe Alt. Moving on from Mike Vrabel, I'm really interested to see what they do with the head coaching hire. I think Bobby Slowick would be my pick right now. You don't have to change the blocking scheme. Joe Alt would be a fantastic addition to that. Fantastic run blocker, while also being, a brick wall and pass protection and a really tall guy. Kind of strikes me as a Tennessee Titan type. Could also go Olu Fashanu here. I just think Alt and his balance and how he can impact in both aspects of the offensive game, I like that a little bit more. That takes us to the Atlanta Falcons. I'm going to go Jared Verse here. You really can't go wrong. And again, I am operating under the assumption that Justin Fields is going to be the quarterback next year. That's just kind of my hunch feeling right now. Bears go quarterback at 1. Fields, I think, ends up in Atlanta. I'm also kind of thinking maybe this is Bill Belichick in a landing spot, or Mike Vrabel, considering he didn't get the New England job. I could totally see where they go for Vrabel. He's done a great job hiring OCs. Arthur Smith was a good play caller. That might be a little awkward to bring into the building. But also Matt LaFleur before that. Maybe they even bring in Mike LaFleur, his brother. Could totally see that working out. Anyway, that's not today's video. Jared Verse. This kind of feels like the top tier number 1 edge rusher they didn't have. Shades of kind of Houston last year, where if you get that guy who could be your perennial 10 sack plus a year guy, all of a sudden those complementary pieces start looking good. Jonathan Grenard starts to have a whole lot more production because he's getting more one-on-ones. All of a sudden you bring in a veteran like a Derek Barnett. He's playing out of his mind in Houston right now. Well, not out of his mind, but he's playing as good a football as he has over the last 5 years now that he's in Houston. Something like that could totally be true here for Atlanta. Like you plug in Verse, all of a sudden Arnold Levitt starts looking really good. You bring in a veteran, maybe it's just bringing back Bud Dupree, and all of a sudden they become a really productive 3rd edge rusher. I think Verse could be that missing piece right now, my edge 1 in this year's class. And then right behind him, I think Dallas Turner has kind of leaped. Leatu Latu is my edge 2. I'm just so excited about his potential. Guys like him and Nate Wiggins, where I can see them steadily improving in the swing, the production is on the up and up. Guys like that are really easy to buy in. Not even just the production, like you see them getting better. Like Nate Wiggins has done nothing but improve his technique and become not just an athlete with great ball skills, but a really good coverage corner, and a guy with a ton of hustle too. And then Dallas Turner went from this guy who could beat you off the outside, shoulder of a tackle and win with speed, and not much else, to now he's added an inside counter. He's adding a little bit of weight. I think he's about 5 to 8 pounds worth of muscle away from really being there. So I'm buying into Dallas Turner now. Still like Leatu Latu a ton, and if it was up to me, he'd go top 15 in the NFL draft as well. Then it takes us to the New York Jets here. Really boring pick here. This is very chalk. Olu Fashanu. This just makes a ton of sense. Rodgers is going to want, if the best pass protector in this class is available for the Jets, you've got to think Rodgers is saying, Please protect me. I'd really love to keep my Achilles intact next year. So this one makes a ton of sense. Strength is a little bit of a problem in his profile. I do worry about what that looks like at the NFL level. A lot more guys who can win with power consistently versus, even the Big Ten. And also, what does that mean in the run game? This has been a team that, especially without Rodgers, has had to lean on that. Don't think they'll have to lean on it as much next year, but that is going to be interesting to see how Olu kind of handles that. But he's going to be a 21-year-old his rookie year. Like, he's still on the up and up, and, at 21, between that age and 25, wouldn't shock me if we see Olu Fashanu add like 15 pounds of muscle, and all of a sudden strength is not something he worries with. So here I think the Jets get a great value at 10 and get the missing piece of that O-line that they're looking for. And then in this situation, you're probably just having AVT play right tackle, letting Mekhi Becton walk. That would be my guess. That takes us to the Minnesota Vikings. I'm gonna have a little bit of a trade here. I think the process would be sound here, but how realistic is it? It's kind of tough to tell, but I'm going to have the Cincinnati Bengals coming up, giving up pick 49, and just in return, I'll have the Vikings give up one of these 2 4th-round picks. I could just see where it's the first and the second for the first. It could just be straight up that, but trying to keep it as even points on both sides, trying to appease both fan bases here. But for Cincinnati, this is a dream scenario. Like, you draft Brock Powers. Yes, you give up your 2nd-round pick, but you get a 4th back. It's not terrible. You're just outside the top 100. It's definitely a drop in, draft capital, but then you get Brock Bowers, who, in a perfect world, I think Bengals fans would have T. Higgins back, and then Brock Bowers just kind of operates as that middle-of-the-field weapon, upgrade at tight end, could even just play some slot straight up. Maybe they bring back like a blocking specialist, maybe someone like a Drew Sample who's already there, or just someone who's solely going to be like an inline blocker. Wouldn't shock me, and then you play Bowers in the slot. A lot of versatility, a lot of things you can do here with Brock Bowers. He's the best tight end I've ever scouted, and get him at 11, it's worth the cost of moving up here, especially for a team that there's also a world where they lose Higgins and Tyler Boyd, and now you're asking Andreas Joshivas to step up and be the guy on the outside. So Joshivas plus Bowers plus Charlie Jones in the mix too. They have some nice young pieces, but not quite to the caliber of who Higgins and Boyd are right now. So there could be, there is a potential outcome this offseason that really forces the issue here for Cincinnati, and they go get a pass catcher here in Brock Bowers. Then we get to the Denver Broncos. I'll go Bo Nix here. I could also see a world where Michael Penix is their guy, but the national title game probably dinged Penix stock pretty hard, and honestly, he might not be a first rounder anymore, despite how much I like him. Really exposed the flaws. Sometimes, as much as I love his aggressiveness, pushing the ball deep down the field, sometimes it can be a little spotty. And I thought Texas would have the interior rushers to force Penix off his spot. Michigan was the one, and specifically Mason Graham was living in Penix's face, and also Washington's number 73. Sheesh, turnstile in that game was not making it easy for Penix either, and that's Penix's blindside, so not good. But all that just, we'll come back to Penix later. But, Bo Nix, I could see where Sean Payton looks at a guy where he's like, yeah, everyone's kind of dinging him for the system he played in, but he went, learned a new offense, became a leader and a vocal captain on that team. High-level processor, he really is. Like, I know the screen, merchant is kind of the thing out there for Bo Nix, but this guy is a quick processor. He moves from reads 1 to 2 to 3 very quickly and has an NFL-caliber arm. And plus, you add in the mobility factor. I could see a world where this is kind of the ideal quarterback for Sean Payton. I have someone who I can use in the round game, kind of an extension of that, almost like what I used to use Taysom Hill for. Not saying Bo Nix is Taysom Hill. Bo Nix defenders do not come at me for saying that, but kind of use him as this, he's my quarterback, but I can also do some of the stuff I did with Hill with Bo Nix. Kind of an interesting thought. Want to throw it out there if you're a Broncos fan. Are you kind of here for the Bo Nix fit? Do you think that's his guy? Let me know what you think. And then we get to the Vegas Raiders. Look, I think right now John Harbaugh would be my prediction would be he goes to the Chargers. And the Raiders should keep Antonio Pierce in my mind. I have a hard time thinking, Mark Davis is thinking, well, history could repeat itself, but, I got to think that he's seeing another interim head coach do a lot with a little in quotes, doing more to maximize that roster than the head coach that you paid a lot of money to. I got to think that he wants to stick with Pierce, and he's getting interest from around the rest of the league. He's got a head coaching interview with the Titans now. So I think Pierce is the guy, but in the off chance that it does become Jim Harbaugh, excuse me, this makes all the sense in the world. Harbaugh called McCarthy the greatest Michigan quarterback in program history. How high do you think he thinks of J.J. McCarthy? That says it all. Also, one last note, and Raiders fan, I hate to say this because this sounds a little dickish to say. I don't think Harbaugh is going to become your next head coach, because think of the last 2 full-time head coaches and how much money Davis has shelled out for. John Gruden and then Josh McDaniels. I'm not saying he's short on cash. I certainly doubt that. But he has paid so much money to those last 2 guys. It might be a tough pill to swallow to say, hey, we're going to go make Harbaugh the highest paid coach in the league now. I don't know. I think on that side, they might just go with Pierce because it's working and it's a little bit more financially feasible, maybe is the way to put it. But if they do land Harbaugh, J.J. McCarthy, this becomes something you'll see in just about every mock draft moving forward. All right, let's move on to the New Orleans Saints here. I'd love to go quarterback, Saints fans, sorry, but that contract for Derek Carr, I just don't see it happening. And it sounds like this Ryan Ramczyk thing is a lot more serious than I'd kind of thought it was going to be over the last few mock drafts, and it sounds like he could potentially retire. And if Ramczyk calls it quits, man, that's the departure of the second best, maybe the best right tackle in football, right there with Lane Johnson. So in that case, let's take J.C. Latham, a guy with a ceiling who could be one of the best right tackles in football. Love him from a run blocking standpoint. One of the strongest players in this class, but sometimes that also dissipates and kind of disappears. So work in progress to be done for sure, but if you're missing Ryan Ramczyk, that's as glaring a need that offense can have. And I love the idea of addressing it here with Latham at 14. I also have a hard time kind of mocking where these right tackles are going to go, but here would make a ton of sense and it helps me kind of pace out everything else the rest of the way. So I would totally be here for this, making my job easier. To the Indianapolis Colts, we're going to have Nate Wiggins come off the board. Love the idea of them adding another long, lanky, athletic corner to pair up with Juju Brents and Jalen Jones. But I think Wiggins is definitely the better of those three. And I like Juju Brents a ton. He's a really interesting, athletic to body build guy. 6'4", but runs like a sub-Devil's 3 cone. Like, how's that even possible? So I love the idea of just adding this guy who's on the up and up. Like I said earlier, Wiggins has done nothing but get better and better at Clemson. 6'2", 200 pounds. Insane jump ball tracking ability, twitchy athlete with an insane amount of hustle too. Just, Google search Nate Wiggins, Amari and Hampton fumble. I mean, need I say more? Yeah, and I love this. And right now he's my outside corner number 1. So I would love this. And I think this is a good value for Wiggins here, right around the 15 mark. Then we get to Seattle here at 16. This is a little something I haven't done. But after I was looking at some of the PFF grades and kind of just, kind of going back and looking myself, Johnny Newton is a great run defender. But Byron Murphy actually had a higher run defense grade this year. And you look at him and he's not maybe as quick off the line of scrimmage as someone like a Johnny Newton is, and it feels like that's where Newton dominates the run game. He just dictates the point of attack, and he's into offensive linemen before they're ready to get into him. Murphy's not quite that way, but also he's 20 pounds heavier, so it's a little bit of give and take. But ultimately, Murphy had the better run defense grades. And I just think, 308's an easier sell than 290 at that, 3 tech spot. So this could be the guy to partner up with Draymond Jones, shore up that run defense a little bit while also adding even more pass rush. And, edge could be a place where Seattle ultimately does attack, but I don't know, like Boye Mafe breakout season. Derek Hall looked pretty good this year when he's gotten down the field. We'll also have Lieutenant Owosu coming back healthy next year. So I think they might have that edge rotation kind of figured out, and then Byron Murphy might be that extra pass rush juice they need while also shoring up run defense. And, just kind of throwing my prediction out there. I'm going out. This is chalk as it gets, but I think Dan Quinn's going to be the next head coach of the Seattle Seahawks. That one makes a ton of sense. And ultimately, as much as I'd love to see Shane Waldron become the next Steelers offensive coordinator, I know a lot of Bears fans are excited about him potentially being their next OC. He's had an interview with Chicago. I think Dan Quinn gets him to stay in Seattle, which would be a huge win there for Seattle. Get Quinn in to be that, Pete Carroll replacement, keep Waldron around. I think he's done a good job. I think that'd be a really exciting offseason there for Seattle. Throw in Byron Murphy the second, my top interior defensive lineman to boot. Then we get to the Jacksonville Jaguars. I'm going to go A.D. Mitchell. Not a pick I've seen in a ton of mock drafts, but one that makes a ton of sense. They don't have a jump ball guy. They don't have that, we're in the red zone, just throw it up, big guy's going to go get it. And, I mean, not only is A.D. Mitchell 6'4", but the man has springs on the bottom of his cleats. It's ridiculous. So he's kind of the receiver type they're missing, but also the reason I think I'm going to end up having A.D. Mitchell ahead of Keon Coleman in my receiver rankings is, Keon Coleman's a work in progress as a route runner. I think he can get there. And A.D. Mitchell's not, refined. He's not Malik Neighbors by any stretch. But like 3 to 4, maybe 5 routes a game, he'll just snap at DB's ankles, and it's just filthy. It's like illegal in 34 states. It's ridiculous. And so I think he's a little bit further along than Keon Coleman. So that's why I'm going here with Mitchell instead of Coleman, just to kind of answer that question. I feel like Jags fans would be wondering about that. Coleman's the bigger name, more consensus, higher-ranked receiver, but honestly, I think Mitchell's a little bit further along, at least from a route running perspective, while also having insane ball skills, can jump out of the roof, and just brings a ton of upside there. And plus, I kind of think about clearing out the field for Christian Kirk and Evan Ingram underneath. Calvin Ridley, A.D. Mitchell, those guys will command respect and be threats that can attack over the top, therefore creating a ton of space underneath for Christian Kirk, Evan Ingram, guys like that. To the Minnesota Vikings, I'll be quick here because this is a pick that I'll continue to mock a ton throughout the cycle. If Michael Penix is going to go in the first round, I think the Rams or the Vikings are the places to go. Work with Kevin O'Connell, work with Sean McVay. I think he'd be a perfect fit into those offenses that force you to play with timing, but also are looking to challenge deep down the field. And there are also environments where Michael Penix is going to have an awesome receiving core around him. That is something I have a little bit of a concern about. If you draft him and then just drop him into, I don't know, trying to think of a team with a major receiver need right now. New England. Let's just say New England, for whatever reason, took Michael Penix at 3 overall. I don't know if he's elevating Devontae Parker, so to speak. I don't know if he's bringing the most out of Tyquan Thornton. But if you drop into a situation like Minnesota where he's got JJ, Hawkinson, Jordan Addison, okay, now we're talking. So I like this a ton, get cheaper quarterback, and then I kind of wonder what Minnesota would do with the cap savings of going from paying a veteran quarterback to a rookie contract quarterback. Where do they use that money? I'd be really curious about that. But here, you get the trade down, you get an extra second-round pick, and get a quarterback in the future. I mean, that's a true win-win scenario for the Vikings, and shades of when they got Christian Darrisaw. I don't want to say they fleeced the Jets because the Jets got a good player in AVT, but the Vikings moved back and still got the best tackle of that class to this point. So, huge win there, and hopefully they can do something similar here with Penix. To Green Bay here at 19, I'll go Cooper DeJean. I think this fit makes a ton of sense, whether he's playing the slot, whether he's playing outside, or if he's playing safety. This is a guy who, whatever the issue is for Green Bay, wherever they see, honestly, let me rephrase that. Wherever they see him best fit, there's an opening for him. That's a secondary that might need an entire overhaul, depending on what happens with Jair Alexander this offseason. To me, I feel like he's going to be gone. And that's still kind of my outlook on it. I think he's not going to be a Green Bay Packer next year. But even if he is, outside corner number 2, Cooper DeJean could be that guy. If you think he's best used as a slot corner like I do, they have a massive hole there. If you think he's best at safety, they have a massive hole there. So pick a spot, whatever you think DeJean's the best, he'll be a starter there for Green Bay. On to Tampa here at 20. I'm going to go Laiatu Latu. I think he should go a whole lot higher than this, but the medical concerns are definitely going to be there. And now I know Bucs fans are going to be like, well, Shaq Barrett had that major injury and he hasn't been the same since. Why are we going to draft this, injury-prone edge rusher? It's been a clean bill of health the last 2 years. And I think maybe he doesn't play as many snaps as Myles Garrett or TJ Watt, given if he's healthy for 17 games, but still, even if you're taking 5-10 snaps away from him, he's going to be so productive, and he's just NFL ready. This is a guy that, this is a team that won the division. You can plug and play this guy and go make a run at it, do it again next year. This is not a developmental piece that takes 2 to 3 years to come along. Laiatu Latu is an above-average athlete, but has everything else ready to go at the NFL level. So, love this a ton, and this is a team that I think the pass rush has gotten a little bit better over the course of this season, but you need to keep that pass rush good if they're going to keep that secondary clean, which is unfortunate. Hopefully next year that secondary, Carlton Davis, Jamel Dean, they just have an improved bounce back season next year. This year they've kind of disappointed, so also don't hate the idea of going somewhere in the secondary here. And depending on what happens with Antoine Winfield Jr., the Bucs would be crazy not to bring him back, but if they lose him, Cam Kinchins is definitely in play here for me. Let me get to the Arizona Cardinals here at 21. I'm going to go with Terrion Arnold. Right now, he's my slot 2, just behind Cooper DeJean. And if you were to call him an outside corner, he'd be my outside corner 2, just behind Nate Wiggins. I like this guy a ton. I just don't know if he's going to be, the arm length. I don't know if that's going to check out and have him play on the outside. Granted, Roger McCreary had a pretty good season. That was his major concern coming out of Auburn, so we'll see. But whether it's inside or out, there's a place to find a starter there in Arizona. They need an upgrade at both those positions. And Terrion Arnold should nothing but impress me this year at Alabama, man. And such a twitchy side-to-side, change-of-direction mover. Sticky in coverage, and plays a little bit bigger than 6 foot, 190. But yeah, again, I think it comes down to that arm length. If that checks out, then maybe he can play on the outside, but I think slots is a valuable position there's going to be in the NFL moving forward. I've said that 1,000 times, so I just plug him in the slot and take away easy throws for opposing defenses. All right, let's get to the Los Angeles Rams here at 22. Chop Robinson, man, this feels like a really great place for him to go because he's a work in progress as a pass rusher, but he's a phenomenal athlete. And we're kind of seeing Byron Young kind of feast off of the attention that Aaron Donald gets. An explosive athlete, really good run defender, still learning moves, but has had good production because, quarterbacks are escaping the pocket and finding Byron Young as they try to evade Aaron Donald. And I think Chop Robinson, this is the perfect place for him to go. Like, be an athlete, you'll win because of it early on, you'll have some good success, and then hopefully by year 3, we've coached you up and you're a legitimate pass rush threat. You got a guy who has multiple moves, knows how to win the hand fight at the line of scrimmage, and all of a sudden this guy could become a 10-sack a year dude in his own right, earning it his own way, So love this because I think he'd be productive right away while they're coaching him up. But then hopefully by back half his rookie contract, he could be as big a force on that Rams defense as there is, depending on where Aaron Donald is at that point of his career. All right, for the Pittsburgh Steelers, I'm going to go Talise Fuaga. A lot of people have pointed out concerns. He's not as nimble as maybe a J.C. Latham and certainly not as a Marius Mims. But I think that's been a little overblown. This guy's not like who's the Minnesota tackle? I'm drawing a blank on 400-pounder from a few years ago. Can't believe that name's escaping me right now. But he's not a slug. He's not a rock that can't be moved. He actually had a PFF grade north of 91 in zone blocking scheme plays this year. And that's what Pittsburgh's blocking scheme is at the moment. Maybe they'll change it this offseason. But either way, whether they stick with zone, Fuaga's already shown I can fit into that. And if they fit into a gap scheme, I think he's going to be perfectly fine in that because this man has no shortage of play strength. He's a mauler in the run game. This is a clear upgrade over Chukwuma Okorafor, and it feels like it completes the offensive line overhaul that Steelers have been kind of embarking on over the last 3 to 4 off seasons, really. And then it makes Jalen Warren, Najee Harris that much more potent. It keeps Kenny Pickett or whoever is under center next year for Pittsburgh. At this point, it's kind of hard for me to imagine it's going to be Pickett. I think this team's going to be in on Kirk Cousins, if I had to guess right now. And this would certainly keep Kirk Cousins very, very happy, considering he's coming from a good tackle situation before his injury this year in Minnesota. All right, to the Miami Dolphins. This one's real simple to me. Grant Barton, he could be an immediate upgrade at left guard. Some people think he can play center, and we'll see what happens with Connor Williams. I think Miami wants to bring him back. But right now they're starting Liam Eichenberg. And take it from a Notre Dame fan, that guy should not be a center. He is not a center. And he has not played well at center this year. So I like Grant Barton here because Teron Armstead misses a couple games. Grant Barton probably won't have the arm length to check out at tackle, but for a 2 to 3 game stint, he's fine. He'll be more than serviceable, especially for an offense that gets the ball out quick. If you need an upgrade at left guard, which I think they do, here it is. If Connor Williams goes down, you need a center, Grant Barton can play that. So this is just a guy that no matter what injuries pop up or what openings there are after this offseason, Graham Barton plugs in and configured to be a starter. So I like this fit a ton for the Miami Dolphins. Then we get to Philadelphia at 25. This one makes a ton of sense. Eagles, top half of the league in regards to man coverage percentage. They're right around 14 last I looked. And Kula McKinstry would just be a fantastic man press corner. And also, I think, they're probably moving on from James Bradbury, if I had to guess. I think you can roll out with Darius Slay for another year or two beyond this season that they're still playing in the playoffs right now. But Kool-Aid plus Darius Slay, okay, cool. We're getting that cornerback room built back up. And then hopefully Avonte Maddox stays healthy in the slot, and hopefully that secondary is a bounce back year, kind of like what I was saying with the Bucs. Hopefully next year that's a secondary that takes a step right back in the right direction with Sidney Brown, Reed Blankenship hopefully playing at 100%, Maddox too, all that sort of stuff. But look, I know a lot of Eagles fans do not like when I mock a corner here. I totally get it, but Howie Roseman's the king of high position value. He does it with the offensive line, he does it with the defensive line. And there's a lot of arguments to be made that corner is just as valuable and maybe even more valuable than those positions. Your average corners are making double-digit $1 million a year, just like an average tackle is. Like an average tackle makes 12 to 15 a year. We're kind of at that market now with cornerbacks. They're probably somewhere in you get a good deal, they're $8 million, average deals 10 to 12, and then your 1 year flyer probably in the $14-15 million range for it. Even just an average to above average corner. That's just the market now with top end guys making north of 20. So here you get 4 years of control plus the 5th year option. A guy who has been starting for Nick Saban for 3 years now since he was a true freshman. This is a guy who knows how to play the position. This is a plug and play upgrade for the Philadelphia Eagles. To the Kansas City Chiefs, here's where I'll have Keon Coleman to come off the board. Work in progress as a route runner, which kind of concerns me here because that feels like they need someone who can just beat man coverage reliably. No Emeka Egbuka in this class anymore. Maybe you could tell me that's Xavier Legette or it's Brian Thomas here. Wouldn't hate those either. But kind of like T. Higgins when he came out of Clemson, you see the steering. You can see how his body moves. I think Keon Coleman has the ability to grow as a route runner, but he's also the big physical wide receiver they don't have either. So maybe Rashee Rice becomes more of a separator guy. Right now he's more of a yards after the catch dude, with Kelsey kind of running those option routes over the middle of the field. So, take your pick of receivers here. Coleman's the highest ranked guy I have left, and he's the guy who I think has the highest ceiling because, again, this guy could totally turn into T. Higgins before you know it. So, like that addition to Kansas City, but this could also be a team that maneuvers the cap and signs someone free agency, maybe looks elsewhere here. Something to monitor here is what happens with Chris Jones this offseason. I like to think that Kansas City's bringing him back, but there's a world where maybe they spend that money on T. Higgins instead of Chris Jones. He goes and walks, and maybe this becomes Johnny Newton or Byron Murphy or Devondre Sweat or someone like that. Just wanted to throw that out here. Can't wait to get it into free agency so we can get a better idea of what these rosters are looking like once we get to that given time. Speaking of Johnny Newton, that's who I'm going to have be the pick here for the Houston Texans. I think they could definitely use an upgrade there on the inside. Newton, NFL ready, great run defender, super explosive off the line of scrimmage, great hand fighter as well, and a great moveset too. This is one of those guys that maybe doesn't have the highest ceiling, but damn near one of the higher floors in this class, maybe the highest floor, to be honest with you. It's really awesome. Think about plugging in Johnny Newton into the middle of that defensive line, what they've gotten out of Jonathan Grenard and Will Anderson this year, get an upgrade there in the middle, and all of a sudden, D'Amico Ryans has that front four looking like what he had at San Francisco. Let's get to Detroit here at 28. Braylon Trice is going to be the pick, guy who continuously shows up in big moments and in big games, and he's kind of the speed to power guy that the Lions don't have. And I don't normally like having Trice go in the first round. To me, I'm not as high on him as most, but again, the big moments kind of sells you a little bit. But also, here in the back half of the first round, I don't hate it as much because a team like Jacksonville already has a dude in Josh Allen. The Lions already have a dude in Aiden Hutchinson. They're just kind of looking for someone else to be a complement. And I mean, Hutchinson can turn speed to power for sure, but Braylon Trice does it to another level. Hutchinson has a little bit more finesse in his game than Trice does too. So I think there's a nice compliment there. Would love to see him end up in Jacksonville because I think that's a great compliment. Maybe Atlanta at the top of the second round, depending on what they do. That could be a really nice fit here, but decided to send him to Detroit because they're looking for a number 2 pass rusher really badly right now. Buffalo at 29. I'm going to make this Xavier Legette. Has that deep downfield ability where he could kind of be Gabe Davis plus or just even fill that Gabe Davis role. You've seen the mocks to A.J. Brown, DK Metcalf out there, Deebo Samuel. To me, A.J. Brown probably feels the most like what I see. I don't love comps because sometimes people just get too narrowed in on it and just assume, okay, Xavier Legette, that's A.J. Brown. Not that easy. A.J. Brown would be like 98th percentile outcome here for Xavier Legette. But he could be kind of that same mold of a player, and that's who I see, you know. And because of that, not only is he a deep downfield, physical, can win the ball in the air, contested catch guy, kind of like what they have with Gabe Davis, but this guy's a monster in yards after catch scenarios, way more so than the Bills use Gabe Davis right now. And we've seen a philosophical shift with Joe Brady versus Ken Dorsey. This offense is looking underneath while keeping an eye on deep down the field shots versus with Ken Dorsey, they were always looking down the field and then adjusting to a check down. It's just been that little bit of a fundamental switch. So I think adding the yards after the catch ability that Legette has, plus the deep downfield ability is exactly what this offense is moving towards with Joe Brady's the OC, assuming he keeps that position next year. I'd be shocked if he's not. All right, on to pick number 30. Let's go Jordan Morgan. Really bounced back from that ACL, MCL injury with flying colors. He's been fantastic this year. Arm length is going to be another thing to kind of check out. I think he checks that from what I've heard and what people have told me. He just will barely get over that 32-inch mark. And if he does, I like him at left tackle. Also could be a guy who fits in at guard. A lot of people have projected him to play guard. So one way or another, Morgan's playing left guard and Tyler Smith's kicking out to play left tackle, or you're drafting Jordan Morgan. He'll be your left tackle, and you keep Tyler Smith in at left guard. That'd be my preferred option. If you don't want to roll the dice and think about, what Morgan's arm length are, just make this Patrick Paul. Keep him in state. I don't hate it. I just like the athletic ability of Morgan better. I think he'd be much better in the run game because of it. So that's why I like the fit in Dallas. That's why I prioritize Morgan over Patrick Paul. To San Francisco here at 31, sorry, 49ers fans, you've seen it 1,000 times, but one, Amari Smith is probably not making it to 31. I'm just not as high on him as others, so it makes it kind of hard. He's going to go in the first round, though, just because of his performance against Ohio State, not this year, but the year before that in the college football playoff. Missed a lot of time this year, but and I don't think he's as good as Broderick Jones either. I don't think he's that highly regarded as a prospect. But a lot of the same stuff people loved about Broderick Jones, Amari Mims has. 6'7", 340. They don't build him like that and have them move the way that Mims does. And this is the spot here for San Francisco where, at the worst, he plays at Colton McKivitz level. And Kyle Shanahan and his scheme, even if you're a bad offensive lineman and not a great fit like an Aaron Banks, maybe, you grade out okay from PFF. The numbers, you're not a glaring weak spot when you watch the game and look at it on tape. You're not like, okay, that guy's costing them games. Like some tackles, i.e. national championship number 73 for Washington, do not want to say costing the game, but a huge reason why Washington lost. Shanahan keeps those guys clean, so you don't ever notice that. So at the worst, Mims is just Colton McKivitz level of play. You don't lose anything, you don't gain anything either. But the upside of this is like you get potential Trent Williams, baby Trent Williams on the other side of the offensive line, and then that offense gets really scary. So love this. At the worst, you're just kind of maintaining status quo. Best option, it's a clear cut upgrade over Colton McKivitz, and that offensive line gets really, really scary. All right, anyways, last pick of the first round. I'm going to go with Ennis Rakestraw Jr. from Missouri. I haven't really talked about him yet. The one thing to keep in mind is, he's 6 foot 195. I don't think arm length's going to be a concern and force him to move inside. So I think this is the outside corner to partner up with Marlon Humphrey moving forward. The 40 is going to be key. If he checks out and runs somewhere in the mid 4.4s to upper 4.4 or low 4.4s rather, if he's somewhere in that 4.44 to 4.49, we'll just say range, cool. The one thing I remain to see, and I want to have a number put next to it, is his long speed, his recovery speed in specific. If he gets beat, can he get back into play? And that's what the 40 is going to tell me. Does he have that straight line long speed to be able to get back into a play if he has beat the line of scrimmage? But that being said, he does play bigger than 6'1", 195. I was actually surprised to see that as his measurables, just because of the physicality he plays with. Great click and close ability. Also knows how to stack up against a receiver. Always puts himself in the best position possible to go make a play on the football. It's just going to come down to what's that long speed, and if he gets beat, can he get back into the picture? So if he runs mid anywhere in the 4.4s, we're great. Once you get into the 4.5 range, I can see where teams kind of drop him lower on their board and are disinterested. All right, let's get into the second round here. Let's give the Carolina Panthers an upgrade over Adam Thielen. Look, he was super productive, great fantasy story for like the first 6 weeks of the year, but it declined for a reason, right? Like, you can't ask the ghost of Adam Thielen to be who he was 7 years ago, So Jalen Polk, this is your slot of the future. This is your Chris Godwin, guy who plays in that division, someone they're very familiar with, right? That's what I see a lot of with Jalen Polk. I see, I hate comps because, again, it sometimes paints the wrong picture and people just buy into him too much. But, Rome Odunze is kind of like a 6'3", 200-pound version of Amari Cooper. Jalen Polk really makes me think about Chris Godwin. And then Jalen McMillan really gives me Christian Kirk vibes. That's why it was super fun to watch Washington this year, I guess. But Jalen Polk is that clear upgrade in the slot, younger guy, too. You keep Jonathan Mingo on the outside. And then I think this is a team that's drafting one, signing one in regards to wide receiver this offseason. So here's your draft pick here, Jalen Polk. Would love to see who they tap and decide to sign in free agency. Definitely going to be a team that's a suitor for T. Higgins. All right, on to the New England Patriots. Jalen Polk could have been an interesting option for them. They love their slot types, but hey, you draft a LSU quarterback. Let's go get him an LSU receiver, right? Brian Thomas, and clear chemistry there for Jaden Daniels. And honestly, Brian Thomas in that bowl game with Jaden Daniels not playing still went bananas. This guy's ball tracking ability is unbelievable. And he's a guy that, maybe the route tree is a little limited, not a whole lot of in-breaking or out-breaking routes, but look, let's just keep it simple this first year. Hitch, come back, go balls, and post routes. Like, if that's his route tree, I'm fine with it. And he's just a better receiver than New England has right now. So even with that same route tree, he'll do more with it than a Devontae Parker, a Tyquan Thornton type. So yeah, clear upgrade here. And this is another team that they should sign one and they should draft one. Like, they need an overhaul in that wide receiver room. So LSU quarterback, LSU wide receiver. If you're a Pats fan, let me know what you think about the Daniels, Brian Thomas Jr. Haul. Let's get to the Arizona Cardinals then at 35. A team that doesn't really have a power rusher on the roster, so JT Tuamelo, kind of an interesting fit here. High upside play here at 35, but also comes with a relatively high floor, just because, he's 6'4.5", he's 270 pounds. I think he's a little inconsistent in the run game, but if I had to guess, that gets evened out and becomes a more consistent player at the NFL level. I think he's got the instincts. Also, Jonathan Gannon's done a lot of great things with that defense, and I felt like he maximized the talent that they had on that side of the ball, and there's no reason to think he couldn't do the same thing with JT Tuamelo. Also, his background coming from Philadelphia, Monty Austin-Forth coming from New England, these franchises that have prioritized keeping depth across the defensive line. I think the value is pretty good here at 35. I'm a little bit lower on Tuamelo than most, but that being said, I think with a consensus board, he'll be right around this area. And it's just, this is a very different edge rusher than BJ Ojolari, a very different edge rusher than Cam Thomas. So I like that addition there to kind of round out that room. Let's get to the Washington Commanders. Next up at 36, this is where I'm at Patrick Paul come off the board. That's what makes a ton of sense. Just draft a guy to be, honestly, Charles Leno kind of gets a bad rap. He's just like the most frustratingly average player in the league, if I had to put that on somebody, where like if anybody's a below average edge rusher, he holds his own. The problem is the NFL has just gotten so deep at edge that like 70% of his matchups are average to above average edge rushers, and that's where Charles Leno starts getting in trouble. So he's also a guy that I think is just, at this point, like, nobody would be excited about Charles Leno being on the roster, especially Commanders fans going into next year. So you probably just draft a guy to kind of make fans happy. Not that that's why you do business. You have your own perspective on it. But if you draft a left tackle, that's going to be heralded as one of the best picks by every Commanders fan, just because they're tired of Charles Leno. And you do get a guy who, not the highest ceiling, but a relatively high floor, pterodactyl wings for arms, and a very proven pass protector at Houston. I know not a Power 5 conference or anything like that, but this guy has been put through pass set after pass set after pass set. This man has an insane number of true pass sets under his college belt. So this is a plug and play guy here, and something that would really, really excite the fan base for Washington. Someone who's not Charles Leno playing left tackle next year. All right, let's get on to the Los Angeles Chargers next up. I'm going to go Kamari Lassiter here at 37. This team needs to overhaul that secondary. Everyone that's not Asante Samuel Jr. and Derwin James, you could find an upgrade for. So Kamari Lassiter, really like the size length proposition here, both from like a body build and also the arm length. I think he checks all those boxes, and had a really nice year here from Georgia, and really became one of the staple pieces on that side of the ball for still one of the better defenses in college football. So huge prove-it year for him, and I think he stepped up. And Denzel Burke, you can see on the screen here, he has decided to go back to Ohio State. Him and Burke, I see in a very similar light, but now, with Burke going back to school, he figures to be kind of CB2 right behind Will Johnson next year. I don't know, not there yet, but kind of early prediction. But glad to see Kamari Lassiter coming out because, man, just kind of checks a lot of boxes, stepped up in a prove-it year, and to me that signals a lot of good things to come for Kamari Lassiter. To the Tennessee Titans at 38, sticking to the cornerback spot, let's go Quinyon Mitchell. This is a secondary that's just been, to put in, for lack of a better phrase, it's been a disaster. I think Roger McCreary has exceeded my expectations. Elijah Molden, pretty solid, slot corner, strong safety type. But they need to overhaul the outside corner. They got to get someone else other than Roger McCreary out there. Caleb Farley doesn't play. Christian Fulton has done nothing but go downhill since his rookie year, unfortunately. Liked him a ton coming out of LSU. Let's go ahead and draft an outside corner. Quinyon Mitchell, I know a lot of people have kind of pointed out that some of his flaws are that he's a zone-only corner. I don't see that. In anyways, like the Browns play the most man coverage in the NFL, and it's at like 45%. So they run more zone than man, and they lead the league in man coverage plays. So even if he's a zone heavy guy, there's going to be a lot of use to be had there. So I'm just looking at a guy with a ton of ball skills for a team that needs to generate more turnovers, a team that needs to overhaul that cornerback room and that secondary as a whole, really. I feel like this is a good value here at 38, and a guy that can be an immediate starter for them. All right, let's get to the Giants here at 39. I normally go Tyler Guyton here. This has been Tyler Guyton the last handful of mocks, but today let's go Troy Fautanu. He's going to move inside to play guard, and I think he's going to be a damn good one. And this is going to be just basically me saying Joe Shane believes in Evan Neal. That was one of his first draft picks. They're going to give him another year to kind of prove it at tackle. Hopefully he has this third-year breakout. Troy Fautanu is going to be our upgrade at left guard. Again, a lot of my previous mocks have been, let's take Tyler Guyton right here and let's plug him in at right tackle and move Evan Neal to play left guard. Giants fan, let me know what your preference is. Draft a left guard, see what Evan Neal's all about in year 3. I have a feeling that your preference is Tyler Guyton moving Neal inside to play guard, but I hate making every mock draft the exact same, so we got to change it up, and that's exactly what we're doing this time around. So let's get to Washington here at 40. We'll go ahead and pick up the pace. Let's go Chris Braswell. Team traded its top 2 edge rushers. Need someone to kind of become that long-term piece. Braswell's been really impressive this year. Speed to power guy. Not as many reps under his belt as someone like a Dallas Turner, but because of that, I think teams might buy into it and say, hey, there's a lot of upside to be had with Braswell. He's only getting better. Then to Green Bay at 41. I'm going to have Cam Kinchins come off the board here. I've said this multiple times. I think Cooper DeJean, best position to play him is in the slot. So that's kind of what I made this draft for, kind of thinking. And I like this safety group. It's just kind of a tough position to figure out where they're going to go. Cam Kinchins easily could have been the pick at 19 if Cooper DeJean wasn't on the board. Wouldn't have shocked me. But there's also some bad stuff on his tape, and I could just see where the safety class falls a little bit, kind of living on the board until the second round pretty much. And here you get a guy who can play in the box, can play center field. I think with these draft picks, I'm envisioning Cooper DeJean plays the slot. Cam Kinch is your free safety center fielder, and then hopefully you keep Jair around. But I'm not too optimistic about that. But you have 2 of those new starting spots taken care of with your first 2 picks. Minnesota Vikings, first of 2 picks that we'll have in the next 8 for them at 42. I'm going to go Jonah Ellis. I'm actually really coming around Jonah Ellis. They have him listed at like 6'2", 240. He's really probably closer to 6'5", 230, 232-ish. I don't know. 6'5" might be the ideal size for an edge rusher. I think back to Elvis Dumervil. Man, always won the leverage battle, and he had a 6 spin move. Sounds like Jonah Ellis. Like, I'm not saying he's Elvis Dumervil, but a guy who can consistently win the leverage battle, quick off the line of scrimmage, has a mean spin move, pretty good hand fighter as well. I mean, for a team that's going to probably lose Marcus Davenport this year, is in a perennial song and dance with Daniil Hunter. Will he, won't he be a Minnesota Viking? It's a team that's looking to overhaul that position or at least add one new guy. And I think Jonah Ellis could be an immediate plug-and-play starter and be a pretty productive one at that. All right, on to the Atlanta Falcons. I'm going to have TJ Tampa be the pick here. A team that I think needs one more corner. I mean, I know they're playing Clark Phillips on the outside. D. Alford's playing on the inside. I think next year they'd be wise to move Clark Phillips in the slot. I think he'd be a damn good slot player. He's a good tackler, too. I think keeping him closer to the line of scrimmage in the center of gravity of your defense is a good idea. You draft TJ Tampa, who's been solid and as steady as it comes, really, in this class. At Iowa State, 6'2", 200 pounds, too. Man zone flexibility. You have him be the number 2 opposite of A.J. Terrell. Clark Phillips moves inside the slot. That secondary just keeps getting better and better, and they've already taken a huge step forward this season. On to the Las Vegas Raiders. Another year where I am just trying to give this team some interior defensive line help. Devondre Sweat's a guy I have not marked to them yet. But, man, just get that 2-gapping, run stopping, eat up space in the middle of that defense type of dude. Yeah, it's something we haven't seen the Raiders have. And by plugging the middle, keeps those linebackers clean, let them focus more on their coverage responsibilities. And also, like, I'm just intrigued by this guy who's a pretty solid pass rusher. He'll be talked about as a run defender because he's 360 pounds and, is huge. But he was a really good pass rusher this year for Texas. And Patrick Graham, before he was at Vegas, he was with the Giants. Dexter Lawrence didn't quite come into the player that he is now as, like, clearly the best pass rushing nose tackle in football. But could Patrick Graham be like, hey, this is what Dexter used to do? Could he rub off some of that influence? Could Tavondre Sweat kind of be poor man's Dexter Lawrence for this defense? If he can be, specifically from a pass rush standpoint, oh my God. Plus with what you've gotten out of Max Crosby is one of the best edge rushers in football, plus some of the other guys who have stepped up. The guy from Buffalo, whose name is now escaping me, really broke out this year. Malcolm Kuntz, there we go. Having a breakout season. You add that interior guy like Tavondre Sweat, don't let quarterbacks step up in the pocket. That pass rush looked really, really good in Vegas. So if you're a Raiders fan, let me know what you think about Tavondre Sweat here at 44. All right, on to the Saints at 45. We go Ladd McConkey, a little bit of a different receiver. I think I certainly like Tez Walker better. I think I'd have Xavier Worthy and Troy Franklin over him. But this is a team that has two big play threats in Chris Olave and Rashid Shaheed. Who's that guy to work the underneath stuff? I think Ladd McConkey's going to be a slot receiver in the NFL, 6 foot, 180 pounds, more quick than fast. He just kind of profiles to be a slot, but that's kind of the piece they're missing. And he's the kind of wide receiver that Derek Carr's had a lot of success with as well. So I could totally see this being a guy that makes Derek Carr happy, and it kind of rounds out that receiver room so you have a guy who wins at all three levels. On to the Indianapolis Colts at 46. This is where I'll have Troy Franklin come off the board. Kind of just feels like Alec Pierce who could do more. Could be that deep threat for sure. A little bit of a more slender build than Pierce, but long speed for days, and right around the same height as Pierce, but also gives you way more yards after the catch ability. And that's kind of where his slender build kind of aids him. He's really hard to get your hands on. He's kind of slippery in that way. So also has great vision too. Like that's something that Alex Pierce was never really asked to do at Cincy, be a yards after the catch guy, and it kind of shows with his vision. Troy Franklin was asked to do that a lot at Oregon, and you can see where the reps had paid off. This guy knows how to follow blocks, knows how to set up guys, make them think one way, go to another, and kind of play that game after the catch. So I love this ton. This is just Alec Pierce, but does more for your offense. Then back to the New York Giants. I'm going to go with Adisa Isaac. I continue to mock this. Love this fit. This just feels like Azeez Ojulari, but maybe a little bit better. I don't know. I was a big fan of Azeez coming out of Georgia. Maybe Azeez Ojulari, who realizes his potential and stays healthy. Hopefully, at least, fingers crossed. That's the idea here. But just a solid player, just like a B across the board guy. Solid run defender, solid pass rusher, solid finesse ability, solid ability to win with power. Just a little bit of everything. And that feels like the perfect complement for a guy on the other side. Kayvon Thibodeau has all those special traits. You just need another guy on the other side who can kind of play off of that. And plus, Dexter Lawrence gave Kayvon Thibodeau so many cleanup sacks. Imagine how much Adisa Isaac's going to get with Thibodeau going into another year, getting that much better, and Dexter Lawrence being in there. I mean, this is going to be a guy who has a lot of really good production. Could be a sleeper, the kind of rookie year kind of contender because of that, and mostly based off production. But I'm also a big fan of Adisa Isaac. And we're getting way ahead of ourselves talking about next year's Defensive Rookie of the Year competition. Let's talk about the Jacksonville Jaguars here at 48. Let's go Gabriel Murphy. 3 consecutive years of elite pass rush grade from PFF. 6'3", 250-ish pounds. I just don't see any major reasons why he'll fall. Like a guy this productive should go somewhere in the top 50 to top 64. He should be a second round pick. I'd be curious to hear what people's gripes are with Gabriel Murphy. But man, all I see is a guy with 3 years of awesome production. The tape says this guy can play at the NFL level. The body and the frame and the arm length says this guy should play at the NFL level. So let's plug him in to this Jacksonville defense that needs a number 2 edge rusher. Partner him up with Josh Allen and Trayvon Walker. Got a nice trio there moving forward. Back to the Minnesota Vikings here at 49. Thought about corner, but honestly, if they're going to keep Brian Flores around, I think he can get some development out of those young guys. I think Josh Patelis is going to be their slot guy. So really, it's Byron Murphy and Caleb Evans. Factor in a rotation with Andrew Booth Jr. somewhere in there as well. But this interior defensive line is disastrous. It's bad. And there's a reason why they had to go to a zone blitz. Either they rush 7 or they drop 8. They had to kind of play that game with quarterbacks every snap because once Marcus Davenport got hurt and Hunter, kind of got dinged up, the pass rush wasn't the same. At the beginning of the year when they could just, rush 4 and it was Davenport looking good, Hunter was leading the league in sacks for the first 8 weeks of the year, all things were good. So I kind of just want to revamp that defensive line, draft a Jonah Ellis, draft a Leonard Taylor, get some legitimate talent on the front 4 so Brian Flores doesn't have to think about showing blitz, back it off, or show blitz, bring the heat because he can't generate pressure with those 4 guys up front. Leonard Taylor's a work in progress for sure, but he'll win off size and athletic ability a little bit as a rookie. You're hoping by year 3 this guy has that size, that athletic ability that's awesome, but is also developed as a pass rusher. And if he does, this is going to be one of the biggest steals of the draft for sure. Philadelphia Eagles on the clock at 50. Let's go Tez Walker. Not a receiver. I've mocked them. I've done Xavier Worthy a handful of times. Want to change it up here. Walker's coming off the season with his highest career average depth of target, north of 18 yards. So this guy can be a big play threat, no doubt about it. 6'2", so he brings a little bit more size and a little bit more strength, I think, to his profile than Xavier Worthy. Also a little bit better hands than Worthy has shown so far at Texas, but I still think he could be that number 3 guy. And also, I think there's some fun to be had here if you add Tez Walker by playing Devonta Smith some in the slot. Like, I think you can have Walker kind of rotate inside and out and have Smith be the guy he bounces off of. Or honestly, if you just really want to push people around, put A.J. Brown in the slot. Let him get this undersized nickel corner that the team didn't think about this matchup coming into the game and really kind of bully them there. So Tez Walker with that inside-out flexibility, I think just lets you play mismatch with whoever you think can beat a team's opposing slot corner. Where we've seen this team struggle, and Jalen Hurts loves throwing on the outside, but let's try to open up the middle of the field a little bit more beyond Dallas Goedert. Try to diversify that portfolio by having all 3 of these guys play inside and out. You're just making it a headache for opposing defenses. So Eagles fans, let me know what you think about Tez Walker at 50. To the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, let's go Edgerrin Cooper here. I mean, this is a team with both of its starting off-ball linebackers hitting free agency. Last year, the contract for Devin White and Levante David. If I had to guess, White's going to get it back from someone. They'll probably bring back Levante David on a 1-year deal, and then he'll coach up Edgerrin Cooper to hopefully be a centerpiece at that position moving forward. But a guy with a lot of Tremaine Edmunds in his game. Really athletic, long arms too. Took Edmunds some time to develop, but he was also drafted at 19. Cooper not quite that young, so open for some more immediate impact. But you'll hear a whole lot of the Tremaine Edmunds kind of comparisons for Cooper, and I see it. I think the body type and the athleticism are certainly comparable. You just hope, in this scenario, I'm hoping they bring back Levante David because, I mean, what better off-ball linebacker to learn from than one of the best that I've seen in my lifetime. To the Green Bay Packers once again at 52. Look, I think Rasheed Walker's actually taken some sizable steps in the right direction, but he's been really up and down, and ultimately he's, a 6th-rounder, 7th-rounder. I think they got him the 7th, actually. So let's go ahead and make a, just outside the top 50 type of investment. Let's go Kingsley Suamataia. And Rasheed Walker then becomes your swing tackle. Someone with that much experience is a great swing tackle option. So let's go Suamataia, someone I'm super high on. That being said, Packers fans, we double dipped in the secondary. If you think Rasheed Walker could be the starter next year, what would you do here? I'd be really curious to hear what you think. If you think Walker's the guy moving forward next year and you're fine with him and Tom running it back, what'd you do here at 52? I'd love to hear your thoughts, but I'm really high on Suamataia, and I think the Packers have done a great job developing a ton of their offensive linemen outside of maybe Josh Myers. This could be a really fun project for them to take on. All right, let's get to the Rams at 53. I'm going to go Josh Newton. This is a team that needs some major upgrades there on the outside corner spot. Josh Newton, just kind of like TJ Tampa, solid and steady as it gets. Back-to-back years where really he's been the best part about that TCU secondary. Not quite as big as Tampa, and that's why he's a little bit lower. He's not 6'2", 200. He's probably closer to 6'1", 190. But still, really solid ball skills, man zone flexibility. And like I said, last year I think he was the better TCU corner over Trey Tomlinson, and Tomlinson ended up being the guy who declared and got drafted, and I think he should have gone a lot higher than the 6th round of the Rams. So this would also be kind of a fun storyline. You partner up Trey Tomlinson and Josh Newton, former Horned Frogs, now they're in LA. Kind of serves as a fun story there. All right, next is the Pittsburgh Steelers. I don't have Kalen King come off the board. And simply put, hey, you may be wondering, why King after Newton? Sounds like you're just kind of give your favorite team the better prospect. The better player last year was Newton. Like 2 years ago, you want to go back to 2022, 23? Yeah, sure, King probably had the better tape. But 2023, Newton was pretty clearly the better guy. 2 very different corners. They win in different ways, for sure. And they're also playing at different levels of competition, for sure. But yeah, Kalen King, kind of an interesting prospect. Still declared for the NFL draft despite the down year. And here the thought in mind is he becomes Pittsburgh's slot corner. Again, I prioritize that position a lot more than most. But yeah, I'd love to see him become Pittsburgh's kind of Mike Hilton of the future. Use him as a blitzer. The tackling may be a little bit of a concern if you're feeling like playing him in the slot. I'd be curious to see how much he embraces that at the next level. He's a little bit of a smaller guy. But if you use him as just like a screamer off the edge as a blitzer, I think this guy's athletic ability makes him a really interesting fit for that. But really, the reason I wanted to see him in the slot is because his change of direction, like him and Terrion Arnold are like the top 2 guys in this cornerback class pretty comfortably in regards to change of direction. And with that slot, like as a receiver, you're not limited by the sideline on one side or the other. You can go left, you can go right, you can go straight up the field. You could just sit there and take a screen. So sorry for hitting my mic there. Apologies. But that type of change of direction skill set that King has counters that perfectly. So I'd love to see him be the slot for Pittsburgh if they do make this pick. At 55, I'm going to go Tyler Guyton here. You could definitely have Titus Howard move back to right tackle. I've had some Texans fans note that they think that right tackle is going to be where he moves back to. Makes sense. I could also see him sticking at guard. I know he wasn't awesome this year per se, and a lot of Texans fans think he's better at right tackle. But at the same time, like Kenyon Green is not a fit for that zone blocking scheme. He doesn't fit it whatsoever. Like he's probably a guy you guys trade this year super cheap. Like he probably goes from 15th overall pick to like. You might get a fifth. You might get a fifth from him. And honestly, if like the Baltimore Ravens call him up and get a Kenyon Green for a 5th round pick into that gap scheme, oh my God, it'd just be another steal for the Baltimore Ravens. Don't let it happen, Houston. Hold out. Send it to anybody else. Getting back on track here, I can see a world where they're moving on from Green. They keep Howard at guard, and then they draft Tyler Guyton. The alternative here is like a lot of people also think Tyler Guyton could be a sick guard because of how good he is in the run game. I think he's a little too big to play guard, but there's a world where you make that work and he just becomes a guard for a team that could definitely use an upgrade, particularly at left guard, because Kenyon Green's probably going to be a piece you move on from. He's played right tackle, so a little bit of a flip there. Maybe you can get Shaq Mason to play left guard. Guyton plays right guard. Howard plays right tackle. But this is a fun conversation to have because you equip yourself with pieces to address a major issue. So that's why I want to go Guyton here. Whether he's playing guard, playing tackle, he's addressing a position of need here for Houston. All right, let's get to the Miami Dolphins. This one's going to probably surprise people. I'm going to go Xavier Worthy. Look, I think we've seen over the course of the season that, Waddle and Hill, they need a third guy in that rotation. You need to limit the amount of snaps those guys play. One, because that offense doesn't go without those guys on the field. And secondly, like Hill's getting up there in age. And also these speed guys, like an injury comes and you potentially limit the thing that makes them so special and their speed. So like these are not receivers who you can play every snap of the game. And because of that, I think adding Xavier Worthy into that rotation and letting these three just kind of basically play an even amount of snaps, maybe 40 a game instead of like 60, just throwing out arbitrary numbers, you're keeping Waddle, Hill, and in this case, Worthy fresh. You're hopefully over the course of a season taking snaps away so that way they are more fresh by week 17, week 18, wildcard divisional rounds. And also just by not having them on the field, more plays, you kind of limit the percentage chance of them getting hurt. So I know this is one that most people are going to be like, they have two great receivers. What are you doing? I think they could use a third. It'd also be interesting to think if they go like big body guy, like maybe at 24, what if they went with Keon Coleman, someone who's a freak athlete and has long speed in his own right, but is like the red zone, go up and get it guy they don't have. That's an intriguing idea. I want to float that out. I think the Goat House was talking about that in his last mock draft. Really interesting idea, and I don't hate it whatsoever. Decided to go in a slightly different direction, and basically, let's just have a third super speedy receiver in the mix, and these three basically rotate out. And yeah, they'll play less snaps every week, but look, Tyreek Hill was on pace to break Calvin Johnson's record by playing less snaps this year than Calvin Johnson had by week 11 that year. This is already a team that's kind of limiting those snaps for the speed guys because you need them fresh, you need them healthy, you need them at 100%. So let's add Xavier Worthy and kind of deepen that rotation. And also, like one last note just to kind of like make my case here, it's like, okay, the guys they're rotating with right now are Cedric Wilson and Braxton Berrios. A lot more fun with Xavier Worthy being the guy they're rotating with, right? Right. All right, let's get on to Kansas City at 57. I want to throw out Mason Smith here as an honorable mention because like I talked about earlier, like sleeper idea here is like Chris Jones. I mean, look, they restructured his deal. He didn't get a whole lot out of it. He kind of got a couple of incentives, and that's why the sack was such a huge deal week 18. But, like, I can see a world where he's like, look, we've had our run. We've had it. You guys held out and didn't want to pay me, and I think I'm the best defensive player in football, and I'm going to go elsewhere. I'm going to go to a team that'll pay me like that. I can totally see Chris Jones having that mentality, and he's not crazy for thinking about that. Like, he's legitimately one of the best defensive players in football, and he should be paid for it. So I could see a world where he's not in Kansas City next year, and maybe KC goes interior defensive line, Byron Murphy in the first round. Maybe they do it in the second round. And in this case, I'm operating under the assumption they figured out Chris Jones is back. And because of that, they don't go T. Higgins. That's why we went receiver in the first round. There's a world where if Jones is gone, I would have gone Mason Smith here. He had a really nice year this year at LSU, like a step in the right direction. And that type of ceiling, he is the guy who has the upside to potentially come close to matching a Chris Jones, not Chris Jenkins here. Chris Jenkins is, in my mind, you plug him next to Chris Jones, who you keep moving across the defensive line, playing some at edge, let him be a great pass rusher. Chris Jenkins, who plays with way more power than someone at 295 at that position should have, but just let him be an awesome run defender and keep Chris Jones clean. That's why I made this pick the one that I did. If we get into free agency and Chris Jones goes elsewhere, I would flip this pick to Mason Smith, but did want to go interior defensive line. I think it's a spot where they can get better. Chris Jenkins just a clear upgrade over Derek Nottie as that run specialist next to Chris Jones. But if they miss out on Chris Jones and he goes elsewhere, like, don't be surprised if they go for the upside that is Mason Smith. All right, let's get on to Cleveland here at 58. I'm always thinking about going Peyton Wilson, but I'm gonna go Jermaine Burton here. I think you play him in the slot. You let Amari Cooper keep playing outside. Cedric Tillman hopefully takes a step forward in year 2. You still have Elijah Moore, but I think we've seen that experiment. He's not as good as I thought he would be coming out of Ole Miss. And if he's your receiver 4, I think you're pretty happy about that, to be honest. And you could still rotate him in, kind of mix and match him and Tillman and let them play kind of even workloads, 30 snaps a game instead of one of them getting 60 and one of them getting 10, something like that. But yeah, Jermaine Burton, been really impressed with what he's done this year at Alabama. Really took some big steps forward in regards to his route running. Also added a little bit of size. But yeah, not the same prospect I thought he was. When I thought maybe he'll leave Georgia, go to the draft. No, okay, he's going to Bama. Kind of looked at him last year. Maybe he'll declare. Didn't. Goes back to school, and I think it was ultimately the right decision. Wouldn't be shocked if he ends up going somewhere in the top 2 rounds. This is a loaded receiver class, and Jermaine Burton's kind of getting lost in the shuffle. Then we get to Philadelphia. Back on the clock here at 59. I'm going to go with a guy that this would be a great place for him to go, but Kirian Amegachi, a guy who played right guard at Yale, then moved to left tackle. So I think there's a world where you could just have him go back to that right side, just play tackle, and have him be that Lane Johnson contingent. If Johnson misses time, Amegachi steps in and becomes that spot starter. But hopefully you can have Lane Johnson play another year, have a full season of development for Amegachi, and then he becomes your Lane Johnson replacement. In a perfect world, you have Lane Johnson for 2 more seasons, and you feel that much better about a eventual handoff of the torch to Amegachi. But I think this is a good spot, and he's not one of these tackles that's only played on the left side. He has played right guard, so I feel confident in him being able to flip back to that right side if the Eagles did head in this direction. All right, let's get to the Detroit Lions then at 60. I'm going to go DJ James. Kind of an underrated corner this year's class. He was continuously getting the hardest assignments that Auburn had. Really sticking man coverage with also ideal size. I think he'll be a solid tester at the combine. May not be a combine warrior that steals the show, but he'll do well. Like he'll do well for himself, and he'll probably improve his stock and kind of get in the 60 to 70 range if I had to guess. But a really nice man coverage specialist. Aaron Glenn is using man coverage a little bit less than what he had the 2 years prior as the DC, but this is a guy that fits with what ideally he wants to do, assuming Aaron Glenn is back as a DC next year in Detroit. Let's get the Buffalo then at 61. Kind of went back and forth on this one, but I looked at Mitch Morse's contract, and he's set to hit free agency. So I can see a world where they're like, hey, Morse is on the other side of 30. We don't want to pay him anymore. Let's just get cheap and have 4 years of control over the best center in this class. And if Jackson Powers Johnson falls into Buffalo's lap at 61, that is one of the absolute best values of the class, of the draft. I just didn't find a home, for him earlier than this. So he slipped and he fell a little bit. Sometimes that happens with interior offensive linemen. This would be an awesome way to replace Mitch Morse. Mitch Morse has been a great player for Buffalo. Don't get me wrong, but this is how you replace him long term. Get cheaper at that position. Use that money elsewhere. Really love this. Tackle could be an option here if you decide to move on from Spencer Brown, but I think he's taking a little bit of a year 3 jump. Excited to see what year 4 might be for him. Dallas then at 62. Yep, say it with me, everybody. Blake Corum is the perfect complement next to Tony Pollard. This would require them bringing back Tony Pollard, but if you watch that national championship, or even the game before that, this is your perfect between the tackles, bounce off of dudes, great vision, awesome contact balance, and started to be used a little bit more as a receiver throughout the college football playoff, but it wasn't something he was asked to do a ton of, and because of that, that's what you have Tony Pollard for. This is a perfect complement. Between the tackles guy with Corum, let him be bouncy, kind of pinball and bounce off of tackles, and let him be a great vision early downs guy. And then Tony Pollard brings the big play element that Corum really doesn't, runs off the tackles, outside the tackles, and is more of a receiving threat. I can't get enough of that backfield pairing. And Dallas's roster is good enough to where this isn't a great running back class, but if you take the first back off the board and it's at 62, I think that's totally fine, especially if it's a guy like Blake Corum. All right, San Francisco then at 63. This would have been a great place for Jackson Powers Johnson to go, but instead, let's go with Christian Haynes from UConn. He's going to be a continuous rise throughout the rest of this process as more mainstream and more consensus knowledge is shared about him. Right now, you got to be kind of in the thick of it to really like Christian Haynes. He's eventually going to be a guy that a lot of fans of teams that run zone blocking concepts, they're going to start having this name populate in their brain, and this can become a guy that gets more and more second-round conversations. Here, he's an upgrade. Either at right guard, where he played his entire career at UConn, or you flip him over to the left side, and I've said 1,000 times, Aaron Banks never made sense to fit in that blocking scheme. Christian Haynes, way better of a fit, so you could flip him over to play left guard, actually fill that position with someone who fits that blocking scheme, or he's an upgrade at right guard. Either way you spin it, I'm cool with this selection, big time. Then we get to the Baltimore Ravens. This is another spot where, if Blake Corum went to Baltimore, that'd be ridiculous. I typically on corner, wide receiver, wanted to change it up here. Let's go TreVeyon Henderson. If we're being honest, who's the most talented running back in this class? It's TreVeyon Henderson. That guy has more talent than anybody else in this class, bar none, really. So the idea of like, and you know, like I know he was injured in 2022 at Ohio State. Because of that, the production didn't quite look as good. But when he was healthy the year before that, and then this year, he's a force to be reckoned with. And you put him into a Baltimore backfield where you're already worried mostly about Lamar Jackson. You have one rusher who's always going to be playing, you know, the QB keeper with Lamar Jackson on that read option. You're taking one defender out of the play. It makes TreVeyon Henderson that much more lethal. But all that to say, that's why I'd love to see Blake Corum in Baltimore. Again, I am a Steelers fan. I do not want to see Baltimore get better, but Blake Corum next to Lamar Jackson would be nasty. But here with Corum off the board, I decided to go with TreVeyon Henderson. Again, probably the most talented running back in this year's class. But guys, that's going to do it for my updated 2-round NFL mock draft with trades. Let me know what you think down below in the comment section. Who went too high? Who fell too low? Who's your favorite team? And what'd you think of the haul I gave your squad? Would love your feedback. I would try to respond to every comment that I possibly can. So let me hear your thoughts down below in the comment section. If you're new around here, be sure to hit that big red subscribe button. Plenty more off-season content coming in. A ton more mock drafts left to be done. Trust me there. And plus, we're going to be starting up the Grade the Mock series once again. So I'll be looking at PFF and ESPN and PFNs and NBC Sport, all these different mock drafts that get published throughout the course of a week, and I'm going to grade it on how much I think it's, you know, potentially valid and how much I like the fit. So be sure to subscribe to the channel to see those videos. But hopefully you enjoyed today's video. Be sure to hit that like button if you did. Again, leave me your thoughts down below in the comments section, and I hope you all have a fantastic rest of your day. And until next time, my name is Teach, and I'm signing off.